All right, 100% Dad, Interviews with Dad, episode number 9 with Jacob Tilton. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, man?
Loving life. So this took me, an hour to set up? So we're in Florence Marina, Georgia, which is right on the river with Alabama. And so not only does, there's a time zone change. So not only do we not know what time it is where we are, because, we just drove up to Columbus, Georgia, which is 45 minutes north to find good T-Mobile signal so we could do this. And you have to weave in and out of Georgia and Alabama, which is then switching all the clocks, and we had no idea what time zone we were in, which was less than fun. So we finally get up Columbus, Georgia. My T-Mobile data was maxed out, so I couldn't. You have to host these things on a laptop, so my hotspot on my phone couldn't power my laptop for internet. So then we finally found a coffee shop that would. We just bought $40 worth of stuff from breakfast sandwiches and everything, and I just sent the kids and Ryan away, and an hour just to find internet. That's driving me crazy. But we didn't even have phone coverage. I couldn't even text you or call you and let you know that we were having issues. It was bizarre.
Yeah. I've been there.
T-Mobile is not friendly in these areas, but people with Verizon had plenty of signal. So that was less than fun. But we're here now. Have you ever been to Columbus, Georgia?
I'm not. I haven't spent much time on the western side of Georgia. Most of my time either in the middle or on the East Coast.
Well, you can see it now. So I'm also at a coffee shop. We'll plug them. Iron Bank, if you're ever up here. You don't drink coffee, I know that.
Not a coffee guy.
We're right below a speaker, so you're going to hear music the whole time, maybe a few commercials, but I think we'll be all right. So, let's introduce you. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about you, who you are, all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, so my name's Jacob Tilton. I've been married for about 18 years. I got 3 kids. I got a boy 15, a boy 12, a little girl who's 5. I grew up in rural Florida, just outside of Palatka, a little town called San Mateo.
How many acres is that?
About 2,600.
Okay.
What we farm, mostly timber, cattle, and a few row crops.
What is a row crop?
A row crop, anything that you grow in a row. Okra, onions. We grew artichokes for the first time this year.
Okay.
That's something we've never done before.
How come you guys never got into potatoes? Because I know that area of the county or the country is heavy in potatoes.
Correct. And that was one of the reasons why, is because there's already a large market around here of producers. Plus, it was not something that we were technically set up for. I mean, making honey, producing honey, and pollination.
Okay, got it. I remember that because you guys used to travel all around the country toting your bees with you.
Yeah. Yep.
Are they still doing that?
Yeah. So we're not necessarily. We quit going to Wisconsin. We went there for 23 years straight to Wisconsin to pollinate cranberries, but they. My brothers and my dad still have a few bees now. At our biggest, we were running about 4,800 hives of bees, which is a lot. But they don't run nearly that anymore.
Okay, so now why would you go all the way to Wisconsin? I would think Wisconsin would have their own bees.
Yeah, but the thing is, a lot of the guys up north in Wisconsin strictly produce honey. They don't do much pollination. And so the cranberry growers, it's like almonds in California.
I thought you needed both. I thought in order to get honey, you needed pollination.
Well, yeah, but here in Florida, our seasons are very restricted. What I mean by that is the orange blossoms will bloom for, a month, and then that's it. Dead, gone. And you got to move your bees somewhere else. Unless you have just this perfect gem of a location that's always got something blooming, we're constantly having to move our bees around to find food sources. If not, we got to supplement that, which costs us money. And so one of the things we would do is go north to Wisconsin, pollinate cranberries, and then just stay there for another month and a half, making what we call wildflower. I mean, you have alfalfa, thistle, clover, just a bunch of things that bloom wild. And because Wisconsin's predominantly cold. Come May and June, when things start blooming, pretty much there's something blooming everywhere until the snow sets in around Thanksgiving.
Okay. So would you guys like go drop your hives and then go back to it?
Yeah. So basically, you drop them off in the groves, and then come back home. And when they're done, when the pollination period's over, they'll call you and say, "Hey, we're going to spray for bugs now. We need you to come get your bees, because if you don't, they'll kill your bees." And then move them to nearby locations in southern Wisconsin, just on farms, just local, farmers that just have a little area that they allow us to put them.
And do they pay you for that, or is that something you just get the honey result?
Yeah. So one of the things we do is we oftentimes would pay rent through honey. A lot of people are like, "Hey, I really like honey. How can I get some?" Like, "Hey, do you have any locations that we could potentially put some bees on?" And most farmers like, "Heck yeah, I do." And in return, we would give them about a gallon of honey each year. And it was, it was beneficial.
I'm sure. That's a long drive. It better be beneficial.
Yeah. We quit doing it because we found it was harder and harder to make honey. It was just for the pollination, which is nice, but pollination also puts a stress on the bees. The mood will stress them. Oftentimes, there's residual pesticides on the plants themselves. So when the bee comes back to the hive, they're bringing some of that with it. In the 90s, there was a government program where the government would pay you not to grow anything. You just had to leave your field alone. And by doing that, you had wildflowers everywhere. But when ethanol became a thing, people started plowing that ground up and planting corn because they could make a ton of money off of ethanol. So less and less wildflowers, which means less and less honey.
And I think you and I briefly talked to this before, that honeybees are actually starting to go extinct.
Yeah, so they're struggling in today's environment through diseases that are brought on by, varroa mites. You have hive beetle, which was introduced about 7-8 years ago, and with the and like you said, we've talked about this, but with the varroa mite, it brings with it multiple diseases that constantly bees are having to fight off, and so it's gotten a lot more expensive to do it. I mean, used to you could go into your beehive, make sure everything's okay, treat it with whatever you need to treat it, feed it, and then walk away, and not have to tend it again for months. Now you could go into a hive, it could be perfectly healthy, flat full of bees, come back a week later, and it's down to just a small cluster, and then a few days later dead. And that's the problem.
What's causing it?
Well, and they still are not 100% sure. And a lot of people believe it's a mixture of a lot of things. The disease from the varroa mite, the small hive beetle, maybe it's even bad genetics. I mean, we're kind of barred from bringing any other bees in from other countries. Now we can bring honey, but we can't bring actual bees. And so I don't know, man. I mean, I know most of it's very rare to find a wild hive in the woods. Mostly what people find are swarms from commercial guys like us.
Okay.
Swarmed out of the hive into a tree or into a house. That's not some wild hive that's been there for 50 years. Disease has killed almost all of those off.
So there's no real natural honeybees anymore. They've genetically been engineered?
For the most part, not engineered. It's just, just in any industry or any like cattle industry or anything, you're going to pick the best.
Sure. You're going to breed what works.
Correct. So like for a time we were growing our own queens, which is quite difficult and intense. And in order to breed queens, you got to find whichever ones you want to breed from, right? So what we do is we go through an entire year honey cycle, and we would mark those that produce the most. And if they were consistent through all of the honey, whether it was orange blossom, local wildflower, the cranberry, and wildflower up north, If one or two remain consistent, those were the ones that we would breed from because we want to that type of that type of bee.
That makes sense.
Yep.
So like if I ever bike around town, or, St. Augustine, I would always see like, not every house, but there were a bunch of houses where you'd see like a small box that you can tell it's a honeybee hive because you'd see some bees flying around it. So is that a good thing? Or
Yes.
is that
Very.
okay.
That's
So more
actually
people
very
are
good.
doing that.
The only problem we have now here in Florida is a couple years ago we had Africanized bees finally introduced here. For the most part, Africanized bees have been.
When you say introduced, what do you mean?
What's that?
When you say introduced, what do you mean?
So what happened is Africanized bees have been in South Central America. They come up through Texas and sort of went west towards Arizona, New Mexico. What happened is I know after talking with several people from IFAS, from the state who work with bees, we had basically big transport ships coming to and from Central and South America, bringing in produce. Well, bees had an Africanized hive had swarmed off of the mainland on the ship, and then landed here in around Tampa, and then swarmed off. They had actual like traps set for them to catch them, and
I'm surprised that didn't happen sooner. I mean, we have so many ships coming in from.
And I agree with you. I'm like it took that long. He goes, yeah, because they had set these traps to sort of catch them, and they've managed to curtail it. But now they're here, and it's something we've got to deal with. Like Texas has had them for over 20 years, and what they did is if they found an Africanized hive, they would isolate it and try to breed it with a more docile bee.
Oh, okay.
So again, just like with queens, you kill the Africanized queen and put a more docile one in there, or try to get them to breed with more docile. So you basically intermix them to try to calm that anger down, I guess you could say. And that there's not a real difference visibly to the human eye between an Africanized bee and a normal one.
It's their behavior, right?
Correct. If you put them under a microscope, an Africanized bee is slightly smaller, but for the most part, me and you driving around can't tell. A lot of people are like, oh, they're Africanized. I got stung once. I'm like, no. If you get near an Africanized hive, you're going to get stung hundreds or thousands of times. I mean, get in a truck or get in a house. That's the only way.
They made a movie, I think, about that in the 90s, about some bees that were just. Yes, the movie might have been called Killer Bees or something like that. But,
maybe.
Yeah, it was.
But no, I mean, it's a great thing
that
you have a lot of hobbyists getting involved, because like you said, you don't have those wild hives anymore. So anybody who's trying to grow an outdoor garden and they're trying to grow plants like maybe squash, cucumbers and things that need pollination, that need bees to cross-pollinate, those hobbyists are helping you with your local garden and things like that.
Okay.
That's a great thing.
All right, we got completely sidetracked on bees. This is not a bee thing. That's my fault. I'm the one asking the questions. And again, apologizing for the leaf blower, the delivery truck, the music. So growing up on 3,000 acres, honeybee farm or another farm, and you had 10 siblings, right?
10. Yeah, there were 8 boys and 2 girls.
So a lot of people talk about growing up with, or adults as us. They don't want to have too many kids because they feel like they're going to not be able to give the amount of love and attention to that many children. They get spread too thin. A lot of people want the 1 kid, 2 kids.
Yeah.
Because that many is too much. So I don't know, what number were you in that 10?
3.
You were number 3. So, well, you were on the younger. Do any of your siblings, like as they got 7, 8, 9, 10, did they ever feel like they were less paid attention to or less loved somehow? Or I'm just curious what it came from someone who came from siblings of 10 and had parents that had 10 kids. Does it really get dispersed like that? Does your attention really get divided that much, or are you still able to parent evenly?
No, it gets divided. I mean, without the grandparents, my mom would have went nuts. Because oftentimes, being a mom, you got to pay attention to the one that's least capable of taking care of themselves. So whenever a new baby would come along, the older ones oftentimes have to, I wouldn't say fend for themselves, but take on a little bit more responsibility. And the cool thing about growing up on a farm is when we start getting wild, Mom would basically kick us out and say sleep and come back to work.
You could roam everywhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I beat up many pine tree in my day, and terrified many I'm sure animals as I ran through the woods howling like a howler monkey. But yeah, I mean, you know, like you said, I walked all over that place. Built forts, lost dad's tools, you know, that type of stuff. But yeah, it's very interesting. Like I said, it seemed to me that, you know, as more and more kids came, Mom's attention became focused. But growing up on a farm, we oftentimes joked that Dad had 10 kids because he was too cheap to pay for any labor to come in. And so as soon as you got old enough to do something, you went and worked. Like the first time I went to Wisconsin, I was 10 years old. My oldest brother was 8. And we would go up there and we would smoke the beehives, and we'd be out with Dad. And so some of my fondest, you know, because my dad worked so much trying to put food on the table. And so he was oftentimes gone with the honeybees, constantly moving them the way you have to do. So some of the few times I really got to spend quality time with my dad was when we were moving honeybees, driving down the road. You know, get to ask him questions and, you know, just get to know him, because for a good portion when I was a kid, he was gone. You know, he'd come home in the evening.
So with that many kids, I mean, how did you even travel? So the audio at this point is unbearable. Let me summarize Jacob's answer to their transport. Their parents basically bought a 16-passenger old church bus, no AC, hot as heck. They took out one of the seats for cargo, things like that, and that's what they made work. But for the most part, you know, if they were going into town, they really didn't take all the kids. You know, people would stay behind with grandparents or stay behind at the 2,600 acres and play. So, you know, Jacob kind of went on and said how excited he was every time he went into town, which this was a very small town to start with. But anyway, the audio was too bad to let just play, so quick summary, and here we're going to get back to it. So did all your family live on the same property? Did like your grandparents live on that 3,000 acres as well?
So my dad's parents, and it's my grandfather on my dad's side who owned the property. Yeah, they lived across the field from us. And then right up the road, eventually my mother's parents bought a house. And so we had both sets. And so oftentimes, you know, I spent most of my time over at my dad's parents, who owned the farm, with Granny and Papa. So, you know, as a kid, they became almost second parent, in a sense. Oftentimes, like if there was a kid who was sick, he would go to Granny, because you don't want that kid to get everybody else sick. And so Granny would tend the sick ones, and then when we're better, ship us back.
So if you get corona, you go to Grandma's.
Not anymore. She's not a spring taker. But yeah, that's sort of how it was. I just remember
So Mom was at home on 3,000 acres, often alone with 10 kids.
Yep.
I guess at the end, you know, I guess there were phases of there were 3 kids and 4 kids and 5 kids.
Interesting story. The UPS guy comes up one time and knocks on the door to deliver a package. And Mom answers the door, and she goes, "Do you know you have 3 kids running around naked and a baby calf under your house?" She goes, "Welcome to my world," and she shut the door. Because you bottle feed calves when the mother dies, and that was life, man. And you know, we grew up pretty poor, as far as, you know, Dad didn't make the greatest living, but you know, we always had food and shelter and clothes. We just chose not to wear them. But
so here's a question. So with the dad working that much, and actually having to go to Wisconsin, so be far away, and not coming home late at night or anything, just not being there, was there any resentment within the kids of Dad being gone so much, or is it appreciation for Dad going out and providing, because everything you had was survival in a sense?
My dad was the disciplinarian. Like, you know, and so oftentimes my mother would, you wait till your dad gets home, and he'll deal with this. My dad, after working all day, would have to come home and dish out butt whoopings. I could see I remember as a kid seeing the look like, oh my gosh, I got to deal with this. Okay, come on, kids, line up. And he'd line us up. There'd be 4 or 5 of us, lean up against the couch, and he'd wop, 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 go down the line, spanking. And so when I was really young, I remember being afraid of my dad coming home because, with 10 kids, you're always getting into trouble. And so oftentimes I had a butt whooping waiting for when he'd come home. Now, when I started working with him, again, 10, 11, 12 years old, then I began to appreciate more what he was doing, what it took for him to put food on the table, because I got to see that. And eventually, a lot of kids, when they got off of school for the summer, were like, yay, summer. I was like, no.
Work time.
Yeah, I was going to Wisconsin. It was work, we're baling hay, and it was hot as hell, and that was the farm life. And I grew to respect my dad more as I got older and again, got to spend more time.
I was just about to ask that. So, like, as you became a dad, did you start to kind of reflect on what he was going through?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and even my mother, who like I said, she'd oftentimes, go play. Well, I want to stay in the house. I want to watch TV. No, get out. Go play. I'm like, man, Mom doesn't want me around. Mom doesn't, As you get older and you become a parent, you start to see that, yeah, I get it, right? Even with the 3 I got, sometimes I want to tell them, go play.
Were there ever arguments or, I guess, discussions with your parents of, like, stop doing honeybees? There's farmers all over this country that farm at home. Like, do something here so you're here more often? Or was it just kind of accepted that this is our life, this is what we do?
Yeah, so I know we often joke that, especially when we were doing it, that we hated honeybees. A lot of people are like, oh, I love honey. You love honey, you work with it, don't you? No, I don't love honey. It tastes fantastic. I just don't love it. I grew to resent it because of just how hard we work with not a whole lot of coming back. Unless you're the perfect beekeeper, you're not going to make a ton of money doing it. Not feeding 10 kids and working a farm alongside 3,000 acre farm alongside your dad. So
I'm sure taxes on 3,000 acres are no small amount.
And that's one thing. My grandfather passed away, a little bit ago, and we've sort of taken more responsibility over the day-to-day operations, which he handled. My grandfather did up until he physically, got Parkinson's and couldn't. He was constantly doing the day-to-day things. So we've had to take on more and more of that responsibility around the farm. So that's been interesting.
So when you say we, you talking your father or you siblings as a whole?
All of us. So one of the things, oftentimes you see a lot of families who, fight, don't get along. This person doesn't talk with that one. We've been very blessed and fortunate that all 10 of us can sit down and have a really good time. It doesn't mean we always agree. It doesn't mean we don't throw a cuss word or two from time to time. But we oftentimes will sit down as a family and say, here's where we're at with the farm. Here's where we want to be. All right, let's start talking about how we're going to get there.
So that's what every mom and dad want. They want their kids and them to all, 20, 30, 40 years down the line to all be able to come back together and be. No one wants a dysfunction that seems so prevalent everywhere.
Yeah.
So I guess what caused that? Like, why are you guys? What do you think the advantage was that you're fit with so many people where there could have been a lot of friction, there could have been a lot of fights, there could have been a lot of. I'm sure there was disagreements and big things. I guess what caused you all to stay so tight?
I don't know, man. I know. Like I've had like 2 brothers, Jared and Jordan, fought like cats and dogs. When I say fight, I'm talking like full on bloody nose, fisted. I never got in that because my older brother was huge and I was a beanpole in high school. So if I punch him, I'm dead, right?
Country boys are rolling in the mud all the time.
Yeah, but those 2, it was horrible working with them because we always fight. It was like you don't get nothing done with the referee. But there in high school, something flipped. And again, a lot of it happened when we got older. and became, teenagers or adults, um, we, I don't know,
Do you think it was the sheer amount of time you guys had to spend next to each other?
yeah,
That
because
created a bond that later
we
down
didn't go anywhere. I mean, we were stuck there together. We had no money. Even if we did go somewhere, we really couldn't afford to do anything. When I was a kid, I went to Disney World once, and that was when Mom only had 3 kids. After that, it was too expensive. Like, we could not go out to eat as a family because to feed 12 people,
that adds up.
yeah, and so, but yeah, we just I guess the sheer amount of time, like you said, plus you see this a lot on farms. You see this a lot in a lot of manual labor jobs. A lot of times, people will, you know, j- I guess poke fun at each other, right? Mock each other, sort of, that sort of thing. But it's all in fun. And a lot of that relieves, and me and my brother still do that to this day, whether it's hunting, right? I can't shoot a deer to save my life. I can kill targets all day long, but if a deer comes out in front of me, I'm like Elmer Fudd, and they constantly mock me for that. And I know it's all in fun because I'm going to get my chuckles sometimes later on something else they're going to do that's stupid. And that's something we've always done, and we still do it to this day. And I don't know if that plays a role, but I enjoy spending time with my family. It's one of the best things is when we have a family cookout and everybody just shows up and we sit around and we eat. My cousins, my kids get to play with their cousins.
So I mean, because that's one of the things I say a lot is just like I just feel like as a dad, spending the time with them, even as young when they're kind of boring and just little balls of mush that don't do much. I feel like the time there creates a bond that's going to pay off dividends down the line, just because that's what they know and the bond's there.
I agree, and I know with my own kids, I oftentimes feel I spend more time breaking up fights and disciplining than actually sitting down and having those connections. And then when I think back with my own situation with my dad, I felt kind of the same way with him, right? He was constantly disciplining me and not necessarily, having those good father-son conversations. And so, yeah, I'm with you. Anytime you can sit down and generate good time with your kids, whether it's driving. I mean, driving in the truck was always one of the best moments for my dad because when we got out of the truck, it was time to work. But most of the trucks we had didn't have radio in them, so there was nothing to do but talk.
Just today, good old-fashioned farm trucks.
But today, I feel one of the biggest problems is we have so many distractions, not just kids, but me as an adult. I've got my work, in my back pocket with my phone. I carry a computer with me and can, zone out. So for me, I physically have to leave my phone at home or in the truck when I go places with my wife and kids, or else it's natural now. Just pull that thing out when I have nothing to do.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a source of information. You can do stuff on it. Just I use it now more than ever because we've kind of converted our business to all on the phone. So sometimes, even like working on the RV, like my RV is synced to my phone. So sometimes I'm just monitoring tank levels and things like that, or turning off lights. And I just feel like I'm always staring at that thing. It's genuinely part of life. I've had to sit there and tell the kids, like, Dad's not playing Candy Crush. Like, I'm not. Like, I've never played any games with my phone. I'm literally just working, answering emails or monitoring things, just because everything is tied to it.
Yeah, it's the same here. I have no games on my phone, but my daughter's like, Dad, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm answering emails, or I'm answering students with everything being online now and teaching. I'm constantly, 24/7. I got kids sending me emails at midnight, and my hours are all messed up, so I'm up at midnight answering emails. So yeah, it's interesting.
So you grew up in a traditional family. Mom kind of took care of the household and everything. And I know, I think it was your third kid, right? Where Dana went back to work, and you did a lot with your third youngest, right? Or was it your second?
So with Kale, so I took over sort of the bee business for a time and was running that. And like I said, the bees were dying constantly, which we already talked about. And we were putting so much money back into the business to try to keep it. We decided to go in a different direction. And phase out the bees or shrink them down, which we did. And at that time, my wife, who had went and got a degree in psychology but couldn't find any work, decided to go back to school. And so when she was at school, I was running the bee business and trying to take care of the kids and be a stay-at-home dad. And then when she finished, I was going to school and still stay-at-home dad. So it was very interesting. I had about a 3-year period where
you did a lot with them during the day.
Yeah. And I know my habits around the house and stuff completely changed. I worked all day, roofing or with the bees. When I come home, I'd give out. So cleaning was not something I wanted to do.
Right.
And but being a stay-at-home, my philosophy when I was a stay-at-home dad was my wife's gone. And so when she comes home, I want her to not have to worry about cooking, cleaning. I want her to spend as much time with the kids as possible. So,
and that's coming from someone who I feel like you're very traditional in your values, and like you're, almost that old school, because that's how you were raised.
That's how I was raised, right? The wife stays home, cooks and cleans, and the husband goes out and works. So
is that something you struggled with? Like, was that a challenge in the beginning, or did you just fully accept it and say, hey, this is what we got to do?
No, well, I recognize that she and and then but yeah, so I accepted it. That was no biggie for me. I mean, yeah, I grew up in a pretty traditional household, but I consider myself a somewhat progressive guy. Going to college, I'm the first kid in my family to get a 4-year degree.
Oh, really?
Actually graduate college. I've had several siblings after me who come along and did. Yeah, I'm the first. My mom and dad were high school educated. My grandparents were high school.
You paved the road for them.
Yes.
Take full credit.
Yeah, I'll take that credit. But no, so even though I grew up in a traditional household, and for the first 5 or 6 years of my marriage, it was very traditional. It was interesting seeing, just being that, especially with my daughter. My wife, took her maternity leave and then went back to work. So here I am stuck with this 2-month-old baby, and I never really did well with babies, and I suck it up and get it done type thing. And so it was very interesting learning experience for me. And even though we're both working full time, plus taking care of the kids, a lot of the cooking, the cleaning, the things that I picked up when I was sort of the stay-at-home dad, I still do them. That hasn't changed.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you grew up in nature. It's just what you knew. You were in the woods all the time because your mom kicked you out of the house. Is that something you try and are you raising your kids in that same way? Like you guys are always out and about? Or is
not
that
as much
you're
as I'd
just
like.
a different world?
Yeah, just a different world. Not as much as I'd like. I mean, I try to I still go hunting. The farm's big enough we can go hunt deer and stuff, but I can't pry my kids out there for some reason. Not hunting, at least they say it's too boring. So we go to the gun range.
That hurts.
I know, right? I'm like, as a dad, or growing up before you have kids, you're like, yeah, I'm going to take my kid out. I'm going to teach him how to hunt. Hopefully he shoots better than me and all this good stuff. And they're like, yeah, I don't really want to go, Dad. I'm like,
have you ever taken them? Because I assume you guys got a million squirrels out there. Have you ever done squirrel hunting with them, like with a little pellet gun?
No.
I feel like that would be fun. I've never done it.
Like I said, the only thing that I can get them out there. So now that my boys are a little older, a lot of times we go to the farm for work days. Like tomorrow, we're working cows. We got about 200 head of cattle that we got to treat, vaccinate, and stuff. So they're going to be there working cows. But yeah, I don't spend as much time outside as I would like to because I don't know. Oftentimes, it's just not a lot of opportunities for me, I guess.
Sure, because you're not in a city or anything, but you're in definitely a suburban area.
Yeah. I mean, I always told myself, I said, I'm never going to live in one of those cookie cutter neighborhoods, right? I'm only going to ever live on a farm. My wife was like, I want to live in St. Augustine. I'm like, all right, let's go look. But the only place I could afford is a cookie cutter neighborhood because I'm not paying $1 million for an acre of land.
Yeah.
And so here I am in cookie cutter neighborhood, Bill. So
at least you still have the family farm you get to go.
Yeah,
it's not too far to travel.
I live in St. Augustine, but it's on the south end of it, which is it's only a 25-minute ride to the farm, which helps out.
Yeah. I'm envious of that property. I wish it was mine or my family's.
Yeah,
it's not.
It is a ton of work, and a lot of people. I remember growing up, we're like, "Oh, look at all that land! You guys must be rich." And I'm like, "You ever heard the term land rich and dirt poor?" And most farmers I know are driving 15-year-old vehicles, not because they love that vehicle, but because they can't afford to buy a new one.
Yeah.
And
like I said earlier, I just imagine the taxes on that much acreage is just killer.
It's a lot, and a lot of the work we do, it goes back into upkeep.
Yeah.
Like I said, on top of the farm funds itself, but all of us have to do other things, other jobs to pay the bills, and still go work the farm to keep it. So it's a labor of love. I mean, none of it.
It seems like you guys made some smart moves. Like I know that whole haunted house thing was doing well for you.
It was, but what we found is we ended up cutting back on that because our first year was good, second year was great, third and fourth year we just got less and less people, and a lot of the people that we got were repeats, people who knew. But
right,
the one thing about my farm is it is out sort of in the middle of nowhere.
It's a haul to get there.
Getting people out there was very difficult, and so that was one of our biggest things. Now we've kept everything from the haunted barn because the idea is eventually potentially trying to do it again if we can find sort of a better location.
Sure.
But yeah, when you have that, we're constantly getting together and talking about ideas on how to utilize the land differently in a 21st century world.
Because I assume the whole family wants to keep it. They don't want to have to sell parcels of it off.
Correct. Right. And that's one thing we sat down and talked about was, who's willing to put in the work, and all of us sat down and basically agreed.
So is that something? Do your mom and dad have that in place? Because I'm big on like having a will and life insurance as well. But because like if your mom and dad get in a car accident tomorrow, I mean that could cause some serious friction between the family. That's so tight. Of hey, I want it. I want to live on it. Hey, we need the money to sell it off, or we don't want to put in the money to take care of it, or the time and effort. And that can really divide up a family real quick on something that large.
Yeah, and growing up in that rural setting, we saw it happen with other families, right? Grandpa dies, and the kids are at each other's throats about keeping and selling and who's getting what. So I know with the farm itself, that was all. The will was all put together because, again, it was my grandfather's place. Now, on my dad's side, I don't know. I'd have to ask mom and dad if they full on got a will. I think he does, but I don't.
I would hope so.
Yeah, I know. For me, when my grandfather died, I'm like, and I see kids, adults, people I went to school with who are croaking. I'm like, me and my wife, we got to sit down and do something. Put pen to paper because we know what we want. It's just a matter of sitting down and getting it done.
It doesn't take very long. It's not very expensive. It just takes a little bit of effort, like an hour.
We even got the paperwork. We printed it out to fill it out. We just never actually sat down and did it.
So it sounds like tonight you got something to do.
You're right. Friday night fun.
And then you just got to get it notarized, which a bunch of people in the title business, so you can just swing down there and have them notarize it.
Yeah. But I mean, for me, I never had anything. I had, even when the first.
Well, it doesn't matter. Even if you don't have anything, if you die, and just because some things are in your name, you just don't want it to have to go through the probate courts because it takes so long. It's such a frustrating experience. Whether you have anything big or not doesn't really matter. It's just the process your wife has to go through to move the cars and the house into her name. If you just sit there and write that will that says, "Hey, everything goes to my wife in the event I die," then
I totally agree with you.
Legal process is in place because if it's not there, you would think, You would think if I die, everything's going to go to my wife. But if it's not written and notarized in a will, state specific, it's not going to go that way. It will eventually. It's going to take months. And then your wife goes from grieving that she lost her husband to hating the SOB for not putting the will in place. But now she's got to deal with all this crap because it has to go through the probate courts.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm just telling you, like, until we bought this house that we're in now, I had absolutely nothing that I personally own. We had one car that belonged to my wife. She bought that before we ever got married. That was it.
Do you have life insurance?
I do now, again, and that's been in the past couple of years when I started working for the school district. But yeah, I mean, for most of our life, we didn't have, anything.
We have it now.
Yeah, I mean, now that we're both working, which still to live here in St. Augustine, I don't know a whole lot of families who are single income. It's very expensive.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I know it's not New York City, San Francisco expensive, but for the money that you're making at the jobs around here, it can be difficult.
Well, St. Johns County is one of the wealthier counties in Florida.
Correct.
For
and
households.
things are constantly getting more and more expensive, especially real estate, as more and more people move in. But salaries aren't exactly going
everyone
up.
visits St. Augustine on vacation and says, "Wow, this is a nice place. Let's move here in a couple of years." And they do. And they do. It's driving everything up. It's getting so big. It's driving me crazy.
Like I know they're right here behind my house. They proposed a 5,000 home. Big old massive 2 million square feet of commercial space.
There goes all your wilderness.
Yeah. Well, luckily there is a buffer between me and that development. But all that's they're in the process of putting that together. But even here, living in the woods on the edge of St. Augustine like I do, I mean, I'm constantly seeing articles about new hospitals, new shopping, St. Augustine's just blowing up. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's great from real estate value, from real estate perspective. But growing up on a farm, I don't like being surrounded by a lot of people.
Well, I didn't grow up on a farm, and I don't want to be around people either.
It's just traffic. I sometimes dread going into town because the angriest I ever get is when I'm driving, and that's because you got so many people that you can't control, potentially killing you and your family.
Yeah. Do you ever go up to Jacksonville?
I lived there for about 6 months, and yeah, I try not to.
I hate driving to Jacksonville. Traffic's horrible. I mean, traffic's getting bad in St. Augustine, but
the furthest I ever drive into Jacksonville is the Avenues Mall. That's about it. Downtown. Nope.
That's not so bad. So you got a kid, 15 years old. So he's in high school then.
Yeah, he's a freshman. He's about to finish his freshman year. He goes to the same school that I teach at, St. Augustine High School. So that's been interesting.
Yeah, any struggles with that?
What's that?
Any struggles there?
No.
With him either adapting to high school or having a parent that works there?
No, not really. I mean, I don't think so. Nothing that he's ever mentioned. It's interesting. I don't view myself, in my mind, mentally, I'm too young to have a 15-year-old. Physically, I feel 78, but mentally, I don't feel that old. But it's been interesting, going to school with him and watching him. He's a great kid. He did virtual school for a little bit, and so he's very independent in terms of if he has something, schoolwork to do, he'll do it. I don't have to stay on top of him.
Has there been
totally different, but him,
So 3 oldest 15. So has there been college discussions, college plans starting to be laid? Are you guys like saving up for college or starting to at least work in that direction? Or you're the first one to go to college? Is that even a thing for you guys, or do you care?
I'm going to be honest. I'm not a huge college fan. Having gone to college and seeing all the availability of degrees that make no money. Even history. I went to school. I went back to college. So originally, right out of high school, I got a scholarship to study contemporary dance. I know I don't look like a dancer, but I studied ballet and modern dance out of Brigham Young University. And then and only went there for about a semester and a half, and then come home and went to work, and then eventually went back and got my degree in history. Now I knew as a history teacher there was only really two options for me in the market at the time: teaching and librarian, unless I, sort of get creative and do something online like, crash course or whatever. Those were my options. With my kids, I'd much rather them go learn to weld than get a degree in gender studies and have, not a whole lot of job availability.
I agree with you. I think college has gotten overplayed.
Yeah, heck,
it got stupid expensive. Because I've had this discussion a few times. I have zero problem with if my kids want to do school. I have zero problem with it. We'll pay for it. But I'm probably going to force them to either do in-state where they have Florida's got Bright Futures and programs to help assist in that, or community college for the first 2 years, because I went through it too, and it's like you said. Sometimes you get out there with a lot of money in an education that's very not valuable.
Yeah, I mean,
some of that's your choice of school. A lot of kids are going to those big expensive universities because they look cool and they're the party school and they got a great football team, and it's out of state and it's costing them, student loans of what $30,000-$40,000 a year. Times 4 years.
Yeah.
Massive. So it's a stupid choice in schools to begin with. But yeah, then they get some general degree that has no specific purpose. I mean, it's not like it's a little different when you become a surgeon.
It's insane when you look at the list of potential degrees. You're like, what even is
Why
that?
does it exist? Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And so me, my oldest kid, he's very, very bright, lazy, which he gets that, but bright. And so I would love to see him, engineering or something like that. But when it comes to my kids,
does he have an interest in any fields? I think he's a little young for it, but
yeah. So he was in the aerospace program, which I love that because we got Emory-Riddle. We got Florida. Has a lot of schools for flying or even other things. But he got bored with it after the first year. So next year he's actually going into the teaching academy, which I told him don't. But so we'll see. That's the cool thing. He's constantly trying to feel out, what he wants to do. And so I guess for me, I'm not going to push my kid into anything. I was that way with sports. I'm like, if you want to play a sport, you can play a sport, but I'm not going to be that. You got to play football, Dad, or you got to play baseball, or you got to do what I did when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I just let my kids find their own way.
Force them, support them, let them be them.
That's always been my goal. I mean, other than work, like I will tell my kids, you got to get outside and mow the lawn, or the neighbor needs some help. I want you to go help them. But that's just me trying to build work ethic. It doesn't mean I want them to be a landscaper. That just means I want them to understand the value of hard work.
Sure, you're molding their character.
Correct. Yeah.
That's a good one. So, not a lot of dads will mention that one, in the first hour of talking. But so, like, you talk about helping a neighbor, so generosity, things like those, just being kind.
Yeah.
What else are you guys doing to try and instill those kind of values?
I mean,
I've yet to talk to a dad that mentioned helping the neighbor, which was fascinating. So that's why I jumped on it.
Well, like we had some winds come through, and the guy next door, his fence flew down, and I propped it back up, but it just sat there. And he's in a walker. He's a retired Army vet, and I'm like, you know what? I'm like, boys, come with me. We went to the store. We picked up some screws. I had the tools already, so we put it back up and screw it together. Or here in Florida, we constantly have hurricanes, and one of the things through our religious organization is Mormon Helping Hands is we go out and we muck houses, we clean up, we cut up trees, and so I make my boys go with me, and it's interesting. I remember as a kid, my dad we would go work other people's honeybees. Now, most of these guys were very old and couldn't really work them themselves. But when the day was over, we still had to go back and work ours. And I resented my dad a little bit. I'm like, our stuff's dying, and we're out here helping this old geezer. But the older I got, again, I don't know, age brings perspective. The older I got, I realized how piss poor that attitude was.
So Dad forced the character. It was resented for years, in a sense. So it was a friction point. It just gets appreciated later.
Yeah, and
because the long-term view was for good.
Yeah, it's like my wife. She goes, "Oh, the boys don't really want to go do that." I'm like, I really don't care. They're gonna go. Yeah. And again, my hope is it won't build resentment. It could, and that they could, focus on that versus, their ability to help.
I genuinely don't think it will, because it's for a good reason.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, it's out of kindness. It's out of gratitude. It's helping. So,
and I'm not sitting back in a lawn chair with a Mai Tai watching them get it all done, right? It's Dad's out there busting hump, and you're helping me get this finished. But one of the things I've enjoyed about my kids getting older is the fact that they can go and do those things, right? They can go pull weeds. They can mow a neighbor's lawn. They can actually, get out and serve other people.
So we did that. Our HOA has a playground in our community. And for a while, our HOA just stopped doing things, like stopped taking care of the common areas. And so, like, the trash cans at the playgrounds were all overflowing. And of course, when trash cans are full, normal people would not stuff stuff in there. But for some reason, the rest of the world thinks you should build a mountain on top of it. And then once that mountain's full, you should just toss around the trash can.
Yeah.
Somebody will eventually take care of it.
It's like a game. See how high you can pile it, right?
It's ridiculous. And then, of course, the wind blows it, and it's fenced in, so there's just trash all over the fence. So we were at the playground one day and just noticed that. And, we did the same thing. Just asked the boys, hey, we should clean this up. And they say the same. Why would we clean it up? Clearly no one else is. Why don't we just go ahead and go get some gloves and some trash bags and bag it all up and put it on the curb for the trash guys? And that's what we did. They actually loved it. I mean, they were probably, Levi was probably 7 or 8, so Ryder was maybe 5, and they still ask to this day when we can do that again. I'm like, well, ever since we did it, they've actually taken care of the park, so there's nothing to pick up right now.
And that's an interesting thing. It doesn't have to be some world-changing event. It's something small that takes a few minutes. Like, it took literally 5 minutes.
In our neighborhood.
Put that fence up, and it's something, like I said, my dad kind of forced me to do, and I'm forcing my kids to do it. But so like my middle child, Kale, he goes, when we were doing it, he goes, Dad, this man really can't do this. I go, no, son. I go, he's in a walker. He goes, I'm glad I'm able to help him. Just trying to, I don't know, build character, I guess.
That's exactly what it is. So while we were at the park, they asked about, like, the park's starting to age a little bit, so it was really rusty and everything. So they were asking if we could fix that. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm really skilled at that, but we got a file and some sandpaper, and we filed down some of, like, the sharp corners and things like that just to round them off so no one got tetanus. And we got some cans of, like, rubber spray paint rubberized over some of it. And so I think we went a little above and beyond. But yeah, I mean, they were super excited to do it. And I mean, they still mention it every once in a while. Like, we'll see a trash bag on the side of the road that clearly blew off somebody's truck and busted open. They asked if we can pull over and clean it up. Like, we're not pulling over on I-95 to just hop out without bags and gloves to clean that up.
Yeah.
Something
we got picking up something on a NASCAR track. Good luck, because they don't slow down and get over for nothing.
I mean, maybe if they're older, but I'm not taking a 5-year-old out there. So at least not without some, like, bright orange vest or something.
Yeah, but the hope is that they'll pay it forward. One day when the boys get a little older, they'll look for opportunities.
Well, it's like you said, that feeling when you're done of, like, wow, that was a pain while I did it, but I'm glad we helped that person, or I'm glad we did that nice thing. That feeling, I think, will be remembered, and that's kind of what they strive for, I would assume, down the road. So it sticks with them. What was the other ages of your kids?
Kale's 12, and then Aria's 5.
So you got middle school.
I had one start. Talon started high school. Kale started middle school, and Aria started elementary. So
you got 2 boys that are in middle school and high school, which means they're starting to get exposed to public school, right? Not that it matters. Public and private schools have the same issues. The drugs get more expensive in the private school world.
Yeah.
So you're getting into sex, drugs, girls. Some of the more awkward topics to discuss with your kids. Now I know you, and I know you don't mind saying words that I feel. I'm probably more of a prude. I don't like to say those things and talk about them as much. I guess how did you broach it? At what age or at what maturity did you start to broach those subjects with your kids, and like how were those discussions going? What's your advice to someone like me that hasn't gone through it yet to start to, you got to talk about sex. You got to let them know about it and your values on it. And same deal with drugs.
For me, the number one thing is think back to when you were a kid. When was the first time you were ever exposed to it? All right. You want to talk to your kid at least before that age, right?
Yeah.
Now, me growing up on a farm, I understood the mechanics of the birds and bees at a very young age, which is why it's no biggie for me.
You were breeding animals.
Yeah, right. It's nothing to walk, drive around on the farm and see animals procreating on a daily basis, which is fantastic because that means more money to us, right? It's something you encourage, like, yes, go, do it, and so intimacy and things like that. Even when at our family gatherings, where Dad had 10 kids, he obviously loved Mom a lot. Those are just some of the jokes. But with my own kids, I definitely before middle school, to understand those topics. And my wife, maybe this is again more traditional, but she's like, all right, you're the dad, you need to go talk to the boys, right? She'll handle the girls because there's things that I don't understand. I can't comprehend periods. I can't comprehend, those types of issues. That's something my wife is going to have to deal with, unless he just, God fear and leave, is gone. But with my boys, we talk about how their bodies are going to change and how their lives are going to change and how their focus is going to change. It doesn't mean you got to go into super hardcore detail about all the things, but my thing is, I'd much rather I tell it and they hear from me than they hear from, cousin Joey or Ricky, in sixth grade, who's going to give them a lot of false information.
Yeah, exactly. So I learned, I probably didn't learn. I was probably so misinformed as a youngster. It just blows my mind going back and thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because parents never sat down and had that discussion.
Me neither.
I think after the fact, there were a few awkward ones where I was just like, yeah, I know.
Oh, dude, on my wedding night, I'm 21 years old. My dad goes, I guess there's nothing I need to tell you that you don't already know. That was my dad's birds and the bees talk. That's 21. So I was like, no, Dad, I think I got it.
Yeah,
all right.
I hope so.
But yeah, so it's, I don't know. For me, we try to. And a lot of my morals are based around my religion, which is Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and we work towards. The goal is no sex before marriage, but if you do, you do. But the idea is try to save yourself, but just try to encourage that.
Sure.
But for my kids, no date until you're 16, and we sort of took the approach because I got a 15-year-old, so technically we can't start dating until next year. So the goal is you can never date the same girl back to back. I'm taking the Pam rule and I'm going to implement
it. Now, why is that? What's the intent behind that rule?
Comfortable. One of my, and I look back at my life as a kid, I hung out with the same girls over and over and just got too comfortable. And like, it doesn't mean you can't have your favorite. I just don't want my kids to, I want them to meet a lot of different people.
Right.
St. Augustine is still, kind of a small town. I want them to meet a lot of different people.
Be exposed to as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I would think that way when they do settle down, if it's younger, they don't have regrets 4 years later. Man, I didn't see enough of the world. I didn't meet enough. I just went with the first choice instead of
Yeah, and what my oldest son was like,
it fits me.
My oldest son was like, well, Dad, you married Mom, and you were 20 years old when you married Mom. She was 19. Y'all were still together. I'm like, yeah. And that doesn't mean that can't happen for you. I'm just saying, while you're at my house, this is what's going to happen. And so, and luckily, like I said, my kids haven't started dating, so it's not like I'm trying to break. All right, you've been doing it this way. Now we're gonna no. This is how it's gonna start. This is how it's gonna be. And when you're 18, you date who you want.
Yeah.
But from the age of 16 to 18, I want you to do this. And I told them that your friends are probably going to mock you because that's not traditional. But hey, they mock you for a lot of things.
How did the discussion with drugs and things like that? Because I remember in middle school, I didn't experience it until I moved to Florida. I grew up in a family. My dad always kind of drove in like drugs are stupid, don't ever do them, idiots, that kind of thing. It wasn't until I moved to Florida. I think it was Gamble Rogers Middle School. It was like 6th or 7th grade. Was the first time I got actually exposed. It was like my first day there in PE class. Some kids like, I came in the middle of the year, and some kids like, hey, you like to get high? You want to get high? Like after school? Like my first day, it was my first time being exposed to it. So middle school, which I feel like is pretty early. And I never did them. I don't know, because I think it was just beating me. I think I was more afraid of athletics, it affecting my athletic career. And I just knew I was going to go play in the NFL. So I didn't want it to affect me. Then I got to college and realized that all the great athletes were stoners. So it really maybe doesn't affect you all that much.
Oh, yeah. My top 100 class, half of them were stoned most of the time. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So have you had that discussion with your middle schooler and high school?
Yeah. I mean, we're, especially with high school. I mean, like I said, when I was in middle school, like you, I saw kids selling weed on the playground, like in, during lunch.
Really?
Yeah, they're selling weed right there at Beasley Middle School, and
makes you wonder, like what's their source? Like where they get it from?
And dude, this was years ago, and it's gotten a lot worse now. Like you said, the drugs have changed. It's not weed in a bag. It's a pill that, I know our big problem at our school, on top of drugs, suicide, and other things, is that whole vaping thing, right? I didn't even know what they were.
Oh yeah,
the
e-cigarettes.
Yeah, I taught for 2 years. They're like, it looks like a USB drive. I'm like, I wonder how many kids have been smoking in my class, and I didn't know when my back was turned. I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, we've had that talk, and a lot of it comes down to, like your dad, it's just stupid. It's expensive. And me, I take an economical approach. I'm like,
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
and is that the truth?
Right? And it's not attractive. But like I grew up in a family. My parents never drank. They never did. They never smoked cigarettes. We didn't even drink coffee or tea, which it's a Latter-day Saint thing, Mormon thing. But so it was, that doesn't mean I didn't, sow my wild oats and try a few things. But with my own kids, it's the same thing with sex. I'm like, guys, don't. But if you do,
is there anything that was that you're dealing with in the high school, middle school age group that is unexpected, that just didn't exist, and besides the whole vaping thing, it just didn't exist when we were there?
The depression, the amount of depression and anxiety that I see among young kids today, being a teacher.
Yeah, because you just mentioned you're dealing with suicide in the high school, which I hadn't heard anything about that.
Yeah, oh yeah. So that's and a lot of it is because of the depression and the anxiety that goes along with it. I didn't have anxiety. I don't think I did, when I was a teenager. But today, dude, it's crazy.
What do you think is causing that?
Struggle. Social media. It would be probably the biggest progenitor.
Oh, so caring about what other people are saying and thinking.
Constant comparison. As a teacher, like, they're constantly, well, I've got the new iPhone. Oh, well, I've got, a 3-year-old. You're poor. And then, clothes and shoes. I remember my middle kid, wanted a pair of white Adidas. And I love white. I'm like, yeah, my boy's going retro. Get it. He wears them to school one day and then never wears them again. 2 weeks go by, they're still brand new, just sitting there. I'm like, son.
Someone said something?
Yeah, like, why aren't you wearing the shoes? I just don't like him anymore. I go, you loved him. What's going on? He goes, well, this kid made fun of him. Me, I'm like, F that kid or whatever. But, you know, yeah. And that's just how it is today.
So I mean, even to this day, I just so genuinely don't care what other people think. Like
Yeah.
I almost go against the grain on purpose, just because that's how much I don't care. Like I don't want to go with status quo. Um, Guys, I wonder how you ingrained that. I mean, is
I
that
don't
something?
know. And that,
Did you tell your boy, like, bro, wear them, do you?
yeah.
Like forget, who cares what they think?
Yeah.
It's a
I mean,
freaking loser. Who cares?
and what I told him, I'm like, just laugh it off. With me, I got to the point in my life where I'll make fun of myself before you ever can, right? Like my first day of school, when my students come in, I go, hi, my name's Jacob Tilton, and yes, I'm bald, right? So, you know,
You
and
take
that's
away
what I
the
told my,
power.
yeah, take away the power. And that's what I try to tell my kids. I'm like, if somebody's like, what are those? Be like, they're white shoes. So it's not so funny anymore.
I was telling Ryan the other day, I forget what it was in regards to. I was like, man, I need to remember what the story was. I know I had said if someone was making fun of me because I had purple hair, like I wouldn't care, because to me it's not.
Yeah.
Like whatever, it's irrelevant to me. I don't care what they think. I just think they're wrong. Like that's how I feel on almost everything. Like, if you make fun of me for something because I don't dress, I certainly don't dress for style. I just wear whatever I grab. In high school, I just wore whatever the football team gave me. Like we had in St. Augustine High School, it was maroon shorts and gray shirts. That's all I wore all day, every day. Just no care. I didn't care if it matched. I didn't care if it was inside out. I didn't care if it smelled bad. Just whatever. That's what I wore. And if you thought otherwise, I just thought you were wrong. I mean,
Towards the end of my high school, I remember I started to care a little bit more. For me, it was about girls. I dressed because I wanted to meet girls and whatnot. That's one of the reasons I learned how to dance and went to dance and sing and stuff because I wanted to meet chicks. I was just really into girls back then. But to me, I don't know. And again, maybe this is just me looking back. I swear it's worse today, man, as far as kids just being hypercritical, not only of each other, but of themselves in terms of looks and appearance. And I know, you go on these social media sites like Instagram and all the girls look fantastic, but you take away the filters and a little less fantastic, right?
sure.
But that's all they see is these doctored up things, and everybody looks like they have right. You see this face that looks gorgeous, but if you pan out, their house is just as beat up as yours is, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to get that across to a kid is hard.
Yeah. I guess it's one of those things you just got to start early and just consistent. Who gives
Like
a crap
my
what other
older
people
kid, he doesn't care. He's like you, man. Whatever is laying around, he just does not really care about clothes or
I think
anything.
I think it's great.
But my middle child Kale is super hyper focused on it. I mean, he wants to be in that in crowd. So it's very interesting seeing those two different and trying, having to deal with
That's what it is.
completely different.
See, I never wanted to be in the in crowd. I wanted them to just join me. Like, just come my way. Like, I'm going to go left. You just come with me. If you're going right, whatever, I'm still going left.
I tell him all the time, I'm like, son, be a leader.
Yeah.
Be different. If they, they'll come to you.
Because that's going to be the winning way 5 years after high school.
Yeah.
So how big is suicide really a problem there?
It's pretty bad.
Really? Like, is that within the county, or like, is that just teacher stats nationwide, or is it like your school?
It's nationwide. It's a big issue. I mean, it's to the point where the state of Florida is mandating that we teach mental health lessons, which is odd because I know nothing about mental health. But yeah, this year they mandated finally because anxiety, depression, suicide, drugs have become such an issue in school. I mean, I'm very good, the school district is about protecting kids' identity and protecting.
Right, and then that's smart, because that kind of stuff, that kind of gossip will compound, and
Correct.
that'll
So that's
throw
one
fuel
thing
on the fire.
I love about St. Johns County is as a teacher, it can be difficult because I want to know more about how I can help my students, but they're very, very protective about, what they let people know.
Yeah,
Even
and that's smart. That is smart. That's something I'm going to dig into then, definitely. Put on some more content, and just figuring out how do you, I guess, how do you build up that level of character of self-esteem and self-worth, just who gives a shit what other people think.
And it doesn't matter, dude. We're talking poor kids in a standard class or your ace kids who come from money. It's across the board. It knows no socioeconomic class, which is
something important for dads to be talking about with.
Yeah,
I guess as young as possible.
Rich dad, poor dad, it doesn't matter. Black, white.
Be yourself.
Yeah,
and appreciate it.
But you see it all across the board. Kids act. I mean,
and I would think having a home life where mom and dad genuinely love and care about you, regardless of your path of where you're going.
Yeah,
I would think that's super important versus a mom or dad that's trying to help them fit in with getting the right clothes and getting the right electronics and things like that.
Oh yeah. I mean,
trying to help them fit in because it almost projects as, geez, maybe mom and dad don't have confidence in me to be cool or fit in. Like they're trying to help me get there with these things that are going to change all the time. Versus I have this stable base at home that loves me regardless of what I wear or regardless of what I have and what I wear.
That'd be my biggest thing is just, let my kids know that I don't care. Right. I told my kids, I said, outside of murdering somebody or child molestation, I will always love you and welcome you back to my home. I don't care if it's drugs or divorce or whatever.
Sure.
You're my kid. And my love's not predicated on anything.
No, that's a good thing. All right. Anything else you want to bring up?
I don't know. I mean, like
from bees to suicide.
Yeah, bees to suicide, right? So we cross spectrum. No, I mean, I find it interesting, whole boys versus girls thing. But my kids are still young, and
Cool.
I'm my biggest critic. I've always focused on my negatives, which I guess that's what kids do today. But I always look at drive the wheel thing. I look up, my savings for retirement enough. And I didn't do college education for my kids because we never had enough money to, pay for groceries, much less set aside money. So my hopes are, if my kid's going to college, it's a bright future scholarship. I find oftentimes that one size fits all.
Oh no, and that's the most difficult thing about the subject in general. Is just it's so diverse and so wide, and there's so many things that work. There's a few core things that are important, but different cultures and different personalities and different family, different things work for you, and what works for you doesn't necessarily work for Bill and John. And
my biggest fear before I ever had kids, and it's still my biggest fear today, is that something I said or something I will do will screw my kids up. Will just ingrain in their head and create some sort of, mental break later on down the road. And
I feel like that have to be either really repetitive or really dramatic.
I agree. But that's always my biggest fear is am I telling my kids I love you enough? Am I I know I'm not positive enough. I'm oftentimes, and I was thinking about this the other day. Is I think I spend more time nitpicking my kids. Take out the trash, clean up.
Sure.
You got to be.
Well, we all do that.
For an A, and trying to step back as a dad and say, okay, you criticized. Now let's find
build them up.
something positive, right?
Yeah.
Something positive to because it's not the Army. I'm not trying to break them down to build them up. I'm just
Oh, I am. 100%. I absolutely am. I have no idea tearing them down, as long as we're also building them up on the flip side of that. It's not just constant tear down. It's not boot camp. It's over 20 years, but
it's not.
Yeah, I have no problem nitpicking and correcting, and it just has to be done. I mean, but then also some positive enforcement, build them up.
I mean, I want my kids to be better than me, and not to say that I'm bad. I don't want that. Like my son the other day, what was he doing? He was swinging something around, and it wasn't even ours. And I'm like, son, don't do that. I'm like, that'll break. He goes, gosh, wasn't even doing nothing wrong. I go, no. I'm telling you that will break because when I was your age, I swung the exact same thing around. It was like a boogie board, right? And I'm like, the spring will pop out, and that's not even ours. And he was so upset that I got onto him, but I'm like, dude, I see what's going to happen because I've done it.
Well, and you explain it like that, and it's going to make a whole lot more sense. Maybe not immediately, but upon reflection for him, when the why is told, I think it helps a lot.
But I think oftentimes us as dads is we're like, hey, don't do that. That's a mistake because we made it, right? We don't want you to make that same mistake.
And at the same time, I remember thinking this when I was a kid because I moved out when I was 16, and part of the premise, I remember my dad yelling at me over something. We got in some big fights. But he was saying something like, because he grew up without a dad, that he's giving me everything he didn't have because he didn't have a dad. I just remember thinking, I never said it to him, but you're not giving me the things you did have. You had freedom, you had independence, you had the ability to, you kind of on your own. You could make your own choices. You weren't just being puppeteered. So it's something that's ingrained with me of making sure you give them some of the stuff you did have. Like you had a lot of freedom. You had the ability to just go off on your own. And
as long as we got our work done, my parents were pretty progressive, and you can go hang out, you can go there, and that's one thing me as a dad that I'm having to deal with now with my 15-year-old. Like the other day, he's like, hey, can I go to this ice cream joint with my friends? My first instinct was, no.
Yeah, you want to keep them in your bubble.
Yeah, but I'm like, well, the kid's almost 16. He's going to be driving, so just getting used to the fact that, like you said, I got to
give them some independence,
give them what I did, and but when they're out of my control, they're not safe. I can't protect you. I can't swat away the drugs and that type of stuff, and it terrifies me to death. Especially
part of it. You got to hope you did a good enough job.
In high school, I could just stand in the hall monitoring the hall, and oh my gosh, the stuff I hear. It will make a sailor blush. It's very interesting.
I remember I had a teacher in high school, one of my favorite teachers. She would always do the prom dance. Like she would always volunteer and be one of the teachers there, but she would never look at the dance floor because she did once, like her first year of teaching. It was like she was so scarred by it. She would always face the other way. She would do like the entrance, and that's it. Just because she didn't want to see her students in that light.
Oh, I went to prom with my wife at St. Augustine, and I went to prom with Blacker too. But oh my goodness, they that
was 15 years or 20 years ago.
Yeah, it was. I haven't volunteered as a teacher because, like that lady, I don't want to see any of that. But it's fair. It was intense. I tell my students that story. I'm like, guys with their shirts off and nothing but pants on, and girls with their dresses up around their bellies with their G-strings. I'm just like,
that's not good.
And everybody's in a crowd, so unless the teacher wiggles their way up in there, they're not going to see it. And it's dark and all that stuff. But it was. I'm going to let my kid go to prom. If she wants to go to prom, I'm just going to tell her, keep your shirt on, and hopefully she'll keep her dress down.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. All right, I appreciate you coming on. Sorry it took so long to set up.
No, that's no problem. But glad to do it. If you ever want to do it again.
Absolutely. Yeah, because there's so much more we could have talked about, but I'm going to lose my battery here soon.
Yeah.
All right. Jacob Tilton, 100% Dad, episode 9, interview with dads. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Be good.
Bye.